Uh, Good morning, good afternoon. Okay, I hope you are all well. Um, I'm recording this video Saturday, the 21st of June. Just I'm going to begin to uh, give the date of my videos, so it's easier for people to understand the moment in time I'm talking about things and putting things into perspective, because sometimes I may be speaking of something that's already solved or different or whatever. Some event has happened that has turned what I'm talking about as obsolete, let's call it like this. Okay, so 31st of June 2025. Now, to make this video, I had to do some legwork to see the numbers and even take some notes because the news was so, really so unbelievable that I actually doubted some of my, let's call it, most reliable sources, and I had to go go into other sources in order to cross-reference data so that I could have a clear idea of what was really happening. And as you can see by the title of the video, I will be talking about the consequences of the tariffs and the Trump administration in farming in the US. It's going to be harsh. Uh, from what I've seen, these policies they are affecting everything. Okay, tariffs are affecting everything from livestock to crops to workers to the exporting market, exportations. They are affecting importations of working labor, of machinery, of absolutely everything. And the first thing I'm going to say is this: usually, farmers, by necessity, have to be the most pragmatic people in the world. A farmer has to know the rhythm of the seasons. He has to understand how much a crop will give him in terms of money, how many hands he will, or hands or machines he will need to process his crop, to sow it, to tend to it, to, to harvest it. Animals, okay, how much he's going to need to spend in cattle feed and in, I don't know, in vaccines, in treatments, in everything. So usually these people, and I know a few, they are quite pragmatic. There are people that don't think at a day's notice, they think at an entire year's notice. Okay, in the beginning of a year, a farmer basically has to know what he will do in that year. When will he sow this or sow that, or will he sow another crop or whatever, or will he cull a part of a herd or not? Okay, all of that. So I am really surprised that farmers in the US, like before them, farmers in the UK with Brexit, supported these policies. And I know that right now, Mr. Trump, he spoke that he was having eyes to focus their attention on blue states, and it's not a revenge, okay? Yes. And to lower their zealous behavior when it comes to farm workers and restaurants and hotel workers because it was damaging their business. Go figure, genius. You see a lot of American speaking crops, right? Yes, you do. I'm being ironic, by the way. But I don't know how you, and I'm talking to you if you are a farmer, how you can support this when you know it's going to affect your livelihood. Maybe you are the son or the grandson, whatever, of a farmer. You work in that land every day. You must love that land. I have no doubts about that. Okay, I know how these things are. And how can you support a policy when you know where your manpower comes, where your fertilizer comes from, where your machines come from, where your seeds come from, that you need to have money to invest now and receive later when you pay your debts and you take your profit? How can you support such a policy? Why? Because they bailed you out the last time Trump bailed you out, the last time there was trouble. So what? There should have not been any trouble to begin with. And you say Biden did this, Biden did that. Okay, again, does this justify a person that says, I'm going to get all the illegals and kick them out, when you know that you need those illegals to work in the farms, to work in everywhere, in the processing of meat, which is a horrible job, processing carcasses. It's all horrible. Like I said, I did a lot of things in my life, and you keep supporting these people. And even now, he says he's going to give you a carrot, and you are all ecstatic and supporting him again. I can't understand. But let's go and speak about the real world, the consequences of the to the farming and the cattle, all of that inside of the U.S. Okay, I took notes of the most important crops so I could get a handle on all of this confusion. First thing is first. When you are talking about farming, about cattle, contracts are not made for 15 days. Okay, if you are raising cattle to be butchered to get meat, those are contracts you must have at least minimum 6 months, more likely 1 year to 1 year and a half, to have viable meat to be processed, to have milk, for example, to have eggs, to have chickens, to have all of that. Okay, because an animal is not a machine that you press a button and the animal magically is an adult and is ready to be processed. Okay, just like farming. You are going to plant wheat today, for example. You are planting wheat today to sell in a minimum 6 months, even a year sometimes. It depends on the place where you are. For example, here I know they are able to take about to have about 2 to 3 crops of depending of the I'm talking, for example, of things like wheat, like tomato, like peppers, like fruit, all the 2 to 3 crops a year. Usually normal 2 crops a year. So when you are doing that, you today for 6 months from now, you need to know who is going to buy you. For example, that wheat, where it is going to. You need to know all of that. And you need to borrow money today, for example, to buy seeds, to buy fertilizers, or trust in your own savings account. But you need that money to buy the seeds, I don't know, to buy the fuel, to hire the manpower, to do all of that. Today, you need to know that. And suddenly, you have tariffs that change overnight. And you have nervous Bias. So this is the first thing that you have to understand. Any of you Magalot that are saying maybe this guy is talking bullshit or whatever, no. I know what I'm talking about, and any farmer knows what I'm talking about. Like in any other business, I need to know today what I will be dealing with tomorrow. For example, if wheat is very cheap because there is a lot of wheat in the market, I will plant something else that will give me a profit. I will not only plant wheat if, for example, I have a client that I know will purchase my entire crop of wheat. This is an example. When I'm talking wheat, I can be talking about anything at all. Okay? And I am assuming the risk of ending up this process with a crop in my hands that I cannot sell, or that I will only sell in a longer term if it's not a perishable product. And as we all know, most farming products, they are perishable. You cannot cull the animals, and you will have to continue to feed them. And maybe when they mature to a certain degree, you won't be able to sell, example, that meat at the same price you will buy it. Because I know I don't like it, but there are a lot of people who like veal, or young meats. Me personally, no, that is my taste. Okay, so if someone, for example, a restaurant needs fresh veal to make a veal parmigiana or something like that, I don't know, he won't buy that meat, that animal that you had foreseen, let's call it like this, to be butchered to be sold as veal. Now, number two, USAID was buying kilometric tons of produce from the American farmers to supply their aid groups. Meaning the state was, and what was the USA? USA was an investment of the USA in their soft power. In, for example, feeding someone wherever in the world with food made in America. It was not only creating a degree of appreciation from those people in those countries that were being helped by the USA, it was also creating future clients of American products, and it was also creating an enormous influence over said countries. But Mr. Trump decided to end it, and now other countries are stepping in to take over the place of the USA. And when the USA finally wakes up, my feeling, this is my personal opinion, is too late, too little. But farmers were supplying the USA, then associate producers and whatever, with a lot of produce that they produce exclusively to sell to the government. And now, kaput, all gone. Now, having taken taking in all of this, and add to that the climate of terror, and this is how you have to call it, climate of terror amongst the illegals that were sustaining your industries and your farming with their labor. Some of them are terrified to go to their jobs because a nice guy with a mask and claiming to be from ICE might be there waiting to deport him to somewhere else, or worse. So those people, what are they doing? Trying to keep under the radar. either simply abandoning the country. I'm certain that a lot of people have left the country, or working in jobs that allow them to be more discreet and not so vulnerable to the ice rage. So a lot of workers are simply not going into work. And you hear stories of American citizens being detained in fields just because they are brown skinned. Simple to understand this. Now, there are some crops that have been definitely hit at a level that I don't think no one expected. Let's start with sorghum. Sorghum is planted mainly, I think, in Kansas and Texas. And just in the first 2 weeks, the first weeks of the year, it was down accordingly to European sources, it was negative. According to American sources, it was around 90% less. And I think that after the first 4 or 5 months of the year, meaning April, late early May, it completely flatlined, completely negative. So if in the beginning of the year there was some doubts about it, by that time it was completely flattened. Meaning, what do I mean with this? What I mean is that the sales were much inferior to the profits. Really, the product is there and no one is buying it. It's in storage somewhere, either by the producer himself in silos or whatever, or with the final destination, for example, in a container in a port, waiting to go to China, and it will never go because China was one of the main buyers of it, but not just China. I think I heard someone, a farmer, so take it with a note of a pinch of salt, saying that in 40 years he had never seen this happen. The price dropped so much. The price had continually risen over the years, and now it simply dropped. But again, take it with a pinch of salt. Uh, Turning those crops into cattle field, it solves one part of the problem, but it's not a solution in the long run. Also, it's not a solution to produce for the local market because even with tariffs, you are still importing food, and that food is also flooding the market. All of this will cause is that the prices of things like crops will drop so much because of the pressure from the producers, both inside the USA and the importers, that will try to run your farmers out of business. That the prices will drop so much, but they will not drop for you when you are buying them. And even if they drop now, then in the future, in the next crop, when the producers that were here, that will produce here in your country, understand this, okay? Producers that were in your country producing, they either were run off the business or they simply stopped producing. You will have to rely solely in imports, and then you will pay much more, and this will rise according to the demand inside of the country. Hmm? Now, I had my notes here, and there are also some important parts here that also explain the rising costs. Fertilizer, diesel, seeds, and bank loans. Remember when in the beginning of our talk I said that most of the times you get a loan today so that you can do your job, meaning pay for your fuel, pay for all of that, for the seeds to plant today and get tomorrow. The banks are increasing the collaterals and the risk and the interest because, and you cannot look, you can criticize the banks, but they are also a business. And if there is a higher risk for you to not be able to pay your loan, they are going to charge you a higher interest. Like it, don't like it, it's business. Then you have fertilizer, that I believe a significant part came from Canada. You have seeds, you have diesel, because unlike not like it was promised that fuel prices will go down, they are going up. And with this funny business with Iran right now, it's going to continue to rise. And if you are one of those dimwits that thinks that having oil under the land means you have diesel and petrol and whatever, I would go and check out how much of your petrol in the sense of crude oil, sorry, because petrol in English means fuel. But how much of that crude oil is processed in Canada in refineries and then sent back to the USA? And you will see how dependent you are on Canada. And remember that Canada is trying to sever as many economic ties with the USA, in this case of dependence as it can. And Canada also has oil. All of this is contributing to things like, for example, having farmers that have workers are not even having those farmers, those workers, do a full week of work in the fields, because number one, there is enough, there is not enough work for all the farmers they have, because they are not they are not sowing again, okay, they're not culling cattle, and number two, because it's too damn expensive, and they have to save money wherever they can. Now, also about sorghum, and I took this notice because I think it's very important too. Sorghum is a crop that is very resistant to drought, meaning you can plant this crop with less water. And that is also an important factor because water is expensive. Now, the yes, I had this note here, and it's also important that wheat uh, was one of the most effective crops precisely because of US aid, because all of those by all of those sorry, God, now I'm losing my words. All of that wheat that USA was going to be buying, all of that was cancelled. Hence, no profit. And the farmers, to add insult to injury, are also being forced to find storage to keep that grain in the hope they will be able to sell it and to make some profit out of it. And now, even even if American wheat is sometimes cheaper than the wheat produced in other parts of the world, the issue here is the customers are not buying it because the lack of trust in American business and tariffs. When you have a business, when you need wheat, for example, I'll give you the example of Portugal. Portugal needs to buy wheat. that is one of the things we are not self-sufficient in. So we usually have our own production and then we buy from other countries. One of those countries is the USA. As far as I know, there hasn't been much talk about it, but I think now we are buying wheat from other countries to sustain our demand for wheat. This is just a small example. And why? Because we need a steady supply of wheat. Since medieval times, we have bought wheat from the Black Sea region. Medieval. It was, look, there is a funny joke. It's not a joke, it's a historical curiosity of why is the country Portugal the equivalent to orange in the Turkish language. This has to do because Portugal produces a lot of oranges of excellent quality, and we were traders. We would go to the Eastern Mediterranean. We would buy things like, for example, raisins, dates, certain products, specific like like fabrics and all of that, and we would and wheat, and we would sell oranges, olive oil, you know, a lot of products. Now we are not being able to buy that wheat from there. Why? Because we cannot trust. Not, I'm not talking about the Ukrainians, but the Russians, because the Russians they are waging a war against Ukraine, so we won't buy their wheat. Lack of trust caused by war. In the case of the USA is attacking other countries with unjustified tariffs, with unjustified demands, with hostile behavior, so we cannot trust you. So, if you lack the trust in one supplier of a good that you need, and you have other suppliers that are more than willing to fill in their shoes, and you can trust them, or at least you can trust them more than in the USA, this is what is going to happen. We are going to stop buying your wheat, your products, and we are going to start to buy them just somewhere else because we cannot trust you. And like we said in the beginning, remember, you cannot plan a business, especially a farming business, at a day's notice. And if things change every day, what can we do? Now, let's go over another product as an example. And but in and speaking of wheat, this also has had a consequence that countries like the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan, that traditionally bought a lot of American wheat, are buying it from elsewhere. From the Black Sea region, of course, and from South America, and I think Africa too. So, just a little intermezzo to say how far, and this is not just about Europe. Okay, when you hear me talk, giving examples of Europe, you have to think the world, because after all, the USA is a world economy. Now, as for the examples here, I think that the soybeans, it's the it's the biggest example. The USA sold massive quantities of soybeans through China. And when this shit, with the tariffs, with the hostility, with the pissing contest in the sand began, China sought elsewhere. And now, another giant that produces a lot of soybeans has simply taken over the market of selling soybeans to China, Brazil. Brazil is now the largest exporter of soybeans in the world, or it will be. Okay. And meanwhile, there are asylums filled with American soybeans stuck in the USA, and there is no one to buy them. Nor will there be. Those soybeans are going to rot or turn into something I don't know. I don't know if there is enough industry in the USA to process those soybeans. If there are workers willing to work in that industry or whatever, and if the farmers can wait all that time. Consequences. Do you think Brazil will relinquish their position if, for any kind of chance, the USA suddenly turns into a normal country again? Think again. They will decrease the price. They will do whatever they can to hold on to that market share because that market share means money, taxes, jobs, and a million industries related to that one, just like it was in the USA. And now you lost it. Finally, let's get to the more central business in farming: cattle herding. Tradition, the USA. From the stereotype cowboy, you know, riding in his horse with the large herds across the endless plain, you know, shooting some Indians just out of a joke, okay, getting into shenanigans with the farmers and whatever, a stereotype. And the USA is indeed a large producer of meat. Traditionally, Portugal, for example, and Spain seldom bought meat from the USA. We always bought it from Brazil and from Argentina. And this goes back to the time when both of those countries were a part of the Iberian empires and we had an intense trade of meat. And still to this day it maintains. Just like there are some Portuguese products that are a staple in South American cuisine and that we continue to export to them. Okay, it's natural. But other than that, other countries bought American meat in Europe. Okay, the Americans produce the meat according to the EU standards, and they could sell it here. So it's not like Mr. Trump says that they don't want our meat. No, we could buy your meat, but you have to produce it according to our rules because this is our bloody market. It's not yours, you idiot. Or do you go to the supermarket, okay? And the owner of the supermarket tells you, you are going to buy my lemons. And you say, I don't like lemons. No, but you are going to buy my lemons. This is exactly what that lunatic is telling you. When he says that they don't want our meat is not good enough for them. No, your meat is not produced according to the rules of our market, hence, we don't have it. You, you want to sell us meat, you want to participate in our market, okay, produce the meat according to our rules, and then enter in the game. But we also produce a lot of meat, a lot of pig, pork, a lot of beef, a lot of chicken. So there are things we don't need. And I will ask you, please, to understand this. VAT is on all products, both domestic and imported. So no country is going to cancel VAT on American products, whatever they are, because that would mean our state would not collect taxes on it. VAT is a tax. There are some products here that have a higher VAT, a lower VAT, and some that don't have VAT at all. But these are the rules of market. You go to any civilized country in the world, and every civilized world in the country in the world will have VAT. The only tariffs that existed were on electric cars and I think steel tariffs. But VATs, it's on everything. We have VATs in the apples the farmer sells in the supermarket here. We have VATs on the apples that come from some other country. We have VATs on the beer we produce. We have VAT on the beer we import. That is the business. This is our state. And around here, unlike in the USA where you think you don't pay taxes, but you are taxed for about everything. For example, when I work, well, I'm working, and thank God. And at the end of the month, my employer pays his portion of the taxes and of the social contributions, and I pay more mine. So that if I get sick or when I retire, if I'm ever able to do it, okay, I will collect a pension or I will have medical treatment. Okay, so do you think we are going to remove our VATs on your special products so that our state does not have money to sustain us? Are you mad or are you just stupid? Okay. I just had to talk about this VAT things because I think it's important for people to understand what the hell a VAT is before you open up your mouths and blabbing about it. I won't talk about the tariffs because I already talked about the tariffs, and some people still are unable to understand that. And if they are not able to understand it, there is no use in me wasting my like we say here, wasting my Latin on dumb people. Now, the meat. American beef and American pork and American chicken is stuck in storage in the American ports. It has been stuck since the early months of January, most of it. And most of it will stay there. A part of it will be sold into the internal market. A residual part of it will maybe you will be able to export it somewhere else, but most of it will rot. And the business that is behind it, it will also rot. Because next year it will happen the same as it is happening to the farmers, like I told you now, like I told you before. Okay? Right now you will pay less for beef, for example, or you should pay less for beef. But I don't know what type of speculative marketing or procedures your grocers are doing. I don't know, so I won't talk about it. But right now you have a lot of beef because there will be a lot of beef that is not exported and that needs to be repositioned into the internal market, and the internal market that has less imports will have to take over. Will have to take advantage. Let's call it like this of that boom of meat and all that. But in the next episode, in the next calling, let's call it like this, will farmers still produce the same quantity of meat to the internal market without manpower, with higher fuel prices, with higher feed prices, without even knowing where they are going to sell those animals? Or will they reduce the herds and maybe some of them completely go out of business because they won't be able even to have bank loans to sustain their activity? You call this the master of the deal? You call this good business? Taking measures without even considering the consequences of those actions? Look, I'm not here to tell you how you should vote. I am not telling you, like I said, like I always say in my videos, fact check me. And like I always say in my videos, make your own opinions. But usually, me personally, I judge an event or a person on their actions. I use my understanding to try to understand how it happened. Why did that person act that way? But it's the actions of the person that tell me who they are. If a person was the victim of a bully in his entire life and always bullying me out of back, I would understand why he is doing it. But I will not understand why he is doing it now to others, inflicting the same level of pain to others. And why are people voting against their own interests? You don't like the Democrats. Okay. I've also spoken about this in other videos. I didn't think Kamala was an adequate candidate. And not because she was black, and not because she was a woman, not because of anything of the sort. She did not reach the people. But this was my opinion before. But right now, my opinion is that those people did not want either to be rich. So the blame has to be shared between both the Democrats that were unable to communicate with people and the people that were unable and unwilling of seeing the truth. If you had voted for that candidate, for Kamala, for the Democrat candidate, you would have a continuation of things. You would have order and uniformity in things. But now, you vote in the other guy that says that I'm going to kick out all the immigrants, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to talk about this because I have spoken about it and I won't be repeating myself in videos. If you want my opinion about that, please, if you can, go check out my other videos on the subject and see my opinion about that. And right now, to conclude this video, your farming is, in your own words, cooked. There will be massive job loss, there will be massive lack of production, and then you will actually have to rely on imports. Until now, until this government, until January, you were relying on imports as an integral part of your business that also exported a lot and hence created wealth within your country. Wealth, jobs, commodities, access to everything. But now you are destroying your productive sector, and then in the future you will have to continue to rely in even more imports that will make even more hard for your own productive sector to recuperate some of it. And this is it. Look, in some places in Europe, here in Portugal also, there is a lack of farmers. Mm. We need farm hands. We need people both to work in the land and to manage terrains and whatever. My suggestion, if I may, would be to immigrate to Europe or to Canada or to Australia also, because those countries need farmers. Around here we have a lot of them. A part of my French family that came here, they came as farmers, as winemakers, okay? They also came here, married in, and there they are. And on the German side, a part also came here for the same reason. So, look, Americans, Either fist storm if you think you are able, or immigrate. And I'm not being ironic, I'm not being cruel, I'm just being pragmatic. These are the choices you have. Because what is happening now is just the beginning. I hope, I hope there is some event that might change this course. Okay? And history is never a closed book. Okay? Things happen. No one is, if someone tells you I can see in the future that this will happen and that will happen, they are fucking lying to you. No one knows. Pardon me. We can only predict based on facts. But it's not looking good. Please go check that out. Go check uh, the crops, what is happening to the prices, all of that. Please fact check me. I'm sincerely asking you that. Please fact check me. It's easy and available online. Now, have a great evening, afternoon, morning. I don't know, and I hope to see you all next one.